So welcome to a new one on this channel, and this occasion is the SHAPERBOX. Now this is not a review, it's a deep dive guide about this plugin. Everything on this guide is in chapters, so if you look at the description or the timeline, you can jump to a section or skip the ones you don't want. If you like this guide, please like and subscribe, and if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee, you can check the links at the description. Right, so in this guide, we will deep dive into the global operation of the plugin because all the shapers are different and they all have, different controls. So just creating one single video to cover all of them, that, would be crazy and very long. Still, most of the controls, like the ones you have right here, are shared, like, the creating tools, the envelopes, and so on. So you really need to know the most common controls, regardless of the module that you want to use. So the plan is to release different videos just covering all the different modules one by one. And on this one, we will talk about the global operation of everything. So the main feature of this whole plugin is creating envelopes and doing something with whatever module. Now, you don't need to do this all manually. You have presets. Whenever you go to any of the shapers, right here at the bottom, you have all the presets available, and they will just give you different shapes. Still, most likely, you will just start creating your own little shapes. So for this one, you just can, and what you have, it's very useful, is the custom section. Now, this one is going to be the custom. So if you like whatever you did right here and you would like to use it on different productions, you just can tap right there and it's going to store your shape. And now you just can maybe, go to rhythm, bring something else, just modify it and just, modify it to taste, do something else, and then maybe store it on the second one. Now this is going to be stored within the preset, so you need to make sure that you save that. And then if you want to delete, you just need to hover and you just need to go and delete it just like that. Now another interesting thing, which is something really cool that you get, is the Midi Switch mode. So this one, what you can do, you can create different shapes, store them in a chain right here, just like you have right here. And when you have it on, you can just press different keys on your MIDI keyboard and it will just, toggle between the different shapes. For example, if I do something like this, something like that, and I create something like this, I'm going to be storing this. Maybe I'm going to go to rhythm, I'm going to do something like that, I'm going to be storing this one, and then I'm going to maybe just load this one, this is going to be my third, and then maybe I'm going to go to here, and let's assume that these are my 4 different LFOs, or just shapes that we are creating. So right now, this is doing nothing. When you click it, it's just going to change, but if you toggle on while your track is going, or you can even receive the MIDI information to this plugin, these keys, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, will just make you switch between the different waveforms. So if you're using this on a track and you receive MIDI, you can enable to receive MIDI. We're going to talk about that, but it also depends on your DAW. You can just type, press whatever keys that it's telling you right here, and it's going to switch between those forms. So if I do C sharp, well, nothing is going to change because this one is C sharp. But as soon as I go to D, it's going to change there, D sharp, and then E. And you can easily, by just tapping while the sound is going, just, go to different shapes. You can even create an external MIDI clip, and this can listen to that MIDI information to change between the different waveforms. If you go to this section, it's going to let you know what you're using for MIDI triggering. You can use it directly from DAW. Depends on, on every DAW. But if you go there, it's going to give you all the devices that you have connected. And you can even trigger something, with an external hardware. So it's just, super cool. Right, so before we dive into creating all the envelopes and all the options that we have right here on the toolbar, we need to talk about this section, and this is a scope, and it's a super important part. This tells us what the F we are doing with the envelope. So if I play some hats, you're going to see what they are trying to process. The colored one is going to be the full, but if I start chopping, you notice that the gray part is the one that is original, and the yellow or red or blue is going to be the processed signal. Right? Now, still, this option, this scope has, different options. On the previous version, I guess right now is the latest, I don't remember the number, but it's the latest version, you had a magnitude left or channel. But right here, you can see the magnitude, which is going to be this view. But if you right-click it, you can go to stereo, and you can see what you're doing on left and right. Then you have the combined, which I guess is going to be the left and right combined. And then, I guess auto is just going to be auto. But the important thing is that you do have different views and you just don't have to stand on the magnitude if you don't want to. So with the other view, we already know this one with the stereo view. we just can, start, mangling the audio and the waveforms. And we can see how much we are affecting in left and right, which is, super cool. The other views will just give you a different perspective. So you're right here, you just need to choose the one you want to, the one you want the most. Or you like the most. Alright, so let's talk about the star of the show, which is the LFO wave editor. And it's going to be all of this that we have right here and how we create the envelopes. So we're going to dive into that. Now, as you know, and you already know, to add a point, you just need to click and that will add a point. And whenever you want to move it, you just need to drag it like this. You can go up, down, left, right, you can do as much as you wish. Now, the thing is that when you create a point, that is that it's just not super hard. You have a tiny little curve, and it's because you have different types of points. This one is going to be the soft point. If I click it again, it's going to turn into a hard point. And it's just, a lot harder. Another thing that you can do, if you shift and you click, is going to change it to a medium type of line, a medium type of point. Now, all of this can be changed by right-clicking, and right here you have the options, which is going to be soft, medium, or hard, and you can double-click to delete whatever point that you are just adding. Now, if I add the point, and I go right there, and I just click it, just to make it like that, I'm going to do it smooth. So this is, at the background, it's going to tell you what you're doing with the shaper. Now, still, right here at the bottom, you have something that's called smooth. So this will smooth whatever it is that you're doing. By default, it's 40%, and it's just very reflective of whatever you're doing right here. But as soon as I go up on the smooth, something else will happen. It will attempt to smooth whatever you're doing with the envelope. So if I just do something like that, and I click hard, that is that the motion is smoother. So the line that moves behind the scenes is what it's really happening. Because you're just smoothing 100%. As I go down, it's going to be less smooth until, you just go all the way hard. And maybe you can just turn it off. So still by default, it's 40%. And this is very useful when you have something that it's kind of a super hard, a lot of motion and very rhythmical. For example, let me just give you an example, just like, I don't know, let's say this one, right? So if we do something like this, it's going to be super hard. But maybe it's just too hard, so you can smooth the changes and the transitioning is just going to be a little bit smoother, right? And on top of that, you get your mix. All the shapers have a mix right here at the top. And if you have a lot of shapers, you can control the mix of all the shapers right here at the top. And if you double click, it will just always go to the default position. Now, notice that at the back, you have a grid right here. So this is going to be very important because when you create points and you drag them, they might snap to the grid or not. Depends on what you want to do. So by default, when you click and you drag, you're going to be able to create points and drag them freely. But if you hold shift and you just hold the shift, it's going to snap to the grid that you have in the back. This is great because, you can control it a little bit more. Still, if you don't want to shift because it's a little bit annoying, you just can go right here, click it, and then you don't need to do shift. It will always snap to the grid. But then you have the other problem. What if I want to create a point and then just move it freely? Well, then we do the other thing. We do shift, and now we can just move it freely without snapping if the snapping mode is on. All right, so I'm going to go to the filter, and I'm going to be showing you something else. I'm going to be selecting one of the, quick presets that we have right here at the bottom. So what we get also is a selection tool. So what happens if I want to select a lot of the points or maybe all the points? So maybe I want this one. So you can just drag and whatever you do is going to be selecting those points. So, with the selection tool, which is the most important tool, this is the selection tool, you can select the multiple points and do, a bunch of things. If you want to delete them, you just can go right here at the bottom and delete them all. And if you made a mistake, you just can go back and just, bring them back. Now, when you select multiple points, everything that's just selected within the square, it can be moved. If I click on this and I start dragging, it's going to be moving. And notice I have the snap to grid, enabled. For now, I'm just going to disable. Doesn't matter, but I can just move it up or down and just change whatever it is that you're trying to do. Now, I'm going to be going maybe right here. Now, I'm going to get out and I'm going to be going to this section. So this one is the select all points. So you don't need to, do all of this. just to move them. If you want to select all the different points, you just can click this and it will select all for you. And just by clicking it back, it's going to deselect it. Now, when you have multiple points selected, you can do a bunch of things. And we know that by dragging, we just can move all the points at once. But notice that on the box, you have points right here and you have points on the corner. So if I go maybe to this one and I start dragging, notice that we can just kind of make everything super short. Or we just can, adjust as much as we wish. If I do it on the other side, we can do the same thing. And we can also do it vertically and horizontally. That's what we are doing. Now, still, we have a few tricks. What if I want to, maybe I'm gonna be doing something like this. What if I want to move this, but, when you move it with the mouse, sometimes it's gonna go up, if you make mistakes, maybe you want to move it horizontally, and then you go move it, and then you just, maybe you're gonna move it up or move it down. So you can lock the vertical or the horizontal. If you hold the Alt, you're gonna be locking to the vertical. So now only if I move the mouse and I'm moving like this, it's only gonna move in a vertical way. Now, if I go to Control and Alt at the same time, I can only move it horizontally. And if I do it vertically, just like this, it's just not going to move. Now, the scaling also has a trick. If you hold the Alt and you try to scale, for example, if I don't do it, when I scale it, it's going to scale it from the left and then from wherever we are dragging. But if you hold the Alt and you drag it, it's gonna scale it from the center, which is, a very different thing. Right, so this is what we can do vertically and horizontally to the shape, but we can also skew the waveforms. So if you go to the corners, you can just, adjust it like this, and we could have already, we've been doing that. But if you do Control, it's going to the side handles, it's going to skew it like this. And I'm going up or down. I'm not going like this. I'm just going vertically. So if I do it like this, you just can adjust all the envelopes. So let's say that you have, I don't know, let me just go to something basic. You have like a sine wave, right? And if you choose to duplicate it, you have it like something like this. So I'm going to be selecting all. And what I want to do, I want to kind of trim when we start. So now the motion is going to be, not a lot until we increment and we just, go up. Now let me just go back to the same thing we had before. So if I select everything, when we do Control, again, it's good, but what we can do Control and Alt at the same time, and we are going to be doing it, or around the center, which is, again, just a little bit different, Now, if you think about this, but just by doing this, you can create crazy little shapes, right? You just can go crazy, select all the points, snap to the grid, and we still have, more options to go. So these three ones are called pens, and they're just a different way to the pointer. With the pointer, we know we create a point and then we drag and we just double click and create the waveform. But the pens are a little bit different. This is an easier way to create different shapes. So the first one is going to be the line tool. So whenever we position right here, we just can add, that line. And if I want to add a new one, I can just click and hold, and just by dragging it, you can adjust the line and where you want for the line to be. So if I want to go down, I just need to do this with my mouse, and the line will go down. So if you want to create shapes like this, it's just the easier way of doing this, right? It's just very simple. You don't need to use the pen tool. Now, the other one is going to be the arc tool. If I go to this, it's the same idea. I'm going to be clicking like that. And just by dragging it, you're going to be able to create an arc. So maybe I'm going to do something like this. And when you create an arc, you can go up or you can go down. So it's like creating your own sine wave. Let's say I want to create a sine wave and I want to, do it on my own. So we could easily do it like that. The other one is going to be the S curve. Now this one is going to give you an S. So if I want to shape something like this, for example, we can easily just create the waveforms. You just don't need to maybe go to the templates and then start, using the arrow tool. Because sometimes just using the pointer tool takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of time just to get it right. But this is just going to get it right, 100% of the time. Right, so I'm going to be maybe doing something like this. I'm going to be adding something like that, super simple. We just can, S-curve this. And I'm going to be doing something like this, something super simple. Now, when we are working with the pens, we can easily do things like this. The thing is that sometimes you just need to, or you want to fine tune whatever it is that you're doing. So you will need to go back to the pointer tool just to do it. But you don't need to. If you're standing on one of the pens, by doing shift, it's going to let you use the pen tool while you're just holding shift. So now I can easily just go right here and notice that it's going to snap to the grid by default. But you just can, make your adjustments. And then when you're ready to go back to whatever it is that you are using, you just can lift, just release the shift, and it's going to go back to whatever pen you have selected. Another cool thing that you can do is that you can right click. For now, I'm just going to go back to the arrow, to the pen tool. You can right click and you have a bunch of options right here for the wave and the grid. So you can select all the points if you wanted to. We already know that we can do it with this one. But again, you just can right click and do it. You can move points to the grid. So if the points are not right in the grid, you just can click it and it will adjust all the different points to the grid, to match the grid. Now you can flip it horizontally, so it's going to be, just like flipping or mirroring everything. Then you can do it vertically, and then you can just copy the wave. And maybe if I really like this wave, I just can go to this one. I can right click and paste the wave. All right, so I'm going to go and just flip it horizontally. I'm going to do it vertically. Right, so the other option is going to be the grid, and right here is going to be snap on by default. We already know this option. You can turn it off or on from there, but then right here at the back you have the grid settings is going to be the straight, so that's going to be the straight. So if I go to triplet, it's going to be changing the grid into a different grid. And if I do auto, it's just going to do whatever it is that you are using right here. It's just going to go auto. But again, it's just completely up to you. If I do triplets, now the positions are a little bit offset. So what I can do, I can just move points to the grid and it's just going to adjust to the triplet. So as you can see, just with very simple tools, all the things that, that we can do, just pretty easy to use. The only problem is that you need to learn the tools. But maybe, that's why you're watching this video. Right, so let's just keep moving forward. I'm going to go maybe to the volume because it's just pretty easy to see. And we need to talk about this section we have right here. So behind the scenes, whatever we create right here on the scope is another LFO that goes in loop or another LFO that can, be re-triggered. Now, it's not really listening to your audio, although it can. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But it's simply an LFO, an instruction. So you need to decide how long the LFO will last. So right here, I have an 8-bar loop. It's a simple chord, the dullest chord. So we can just shape it. So I'm going to be playing it. And this is what we get. It's just a pretty simple shape. And I'm going to go to the magnitude, which is, the default one. So the duration of whatever we have right here is going to be decided by this one. So if I want to, let's say I want to sidechain and I want to duck this section, it's going to do it within 1 bar, but remember that my section lasts 8 bars. So what if I wanted to do something more complex and just shape it in different ways? So maybe if it lasts 8 bars, I just can select 8 bars, and all of this is just going to be a little bit different. It will only start on the beginning, and it will just, go all the way, and it will restart after 8 bars. So now, if we wanted to, we just can go and just create more complex things and just start creating different rhythms or, different things. But you need to remember what you want to do right here. Because, again, it could be really long. You can even go up to 32 bars. You can go triplets and you can use dotteds. So if I want to do something super short, maybe I can even go faster. I can do something like this, maybe go to something like that. I'm just going to be creating something super simple. It's going to be, going super fast. So all of this, depends on what you want to do when you're trying to shape something. Also, remember you do have a lot of shapers, so this is really important. Let's say that I want to duck the volume. I just want to use a sidechain. So this is just going to give me that sidechain on each bar, which is, again, pretty simple. But maybe on the other one, I want to do a little bit of filtering, and I want to do a little bit more complex filtering. So maybe I want to do something like this. And just extend it And even though we are getting a sidechain that is going on a different rate, with this one, we just create a little bit more complex, different movements over 8 vars, the whole duration of the clip. Right? So again, all of this, right, all of these options are very simple to understand. Then the complexity comes when you need to create something, right? So like I said before, you can go straight, dotted, or triplet, but then you have an option right here that says free, and it says hertz, and it says pitch. So hertz, it's pretty simple. It's like, you know, working with a delay, for example, where you can go into milliseconds. Well, this is just pretty much the same thing, but it's going in hertz. So you can go faster, or you can go a lot slower. But it's like going into manual mode, right? That's what this means. You can even, you know, modulate this. All right. So just to show you how this works, right here I have a tiny MIDI clip, and what I'm doing is going to be, you know, it's going to be playing for 8 vars, and every time is going to go up in pitch. So if I play it, it's going to be something like that. Goes low, then up, keeps going up, and it's just going to keep going up as we go, right? So I'm going to be going to the volume, and what this mode, the pitch, what we'll do, it will listen to whatever MIDI or whatever pitch that it's receiving from the MIDI clip, and the rate, you know, is going to be decided by the note duration, the note value. So if I do a tiny little sidechain, something like that, and I play it back, now this starts changing right here every time that we go to a different note, so it's going faster. And it's because the value of the note decides how fast this goes. So if I play it, notice that it's just going almost too slow, but at the same time it's maybe going too fast. And it's because, again, remember that when we are right here, let me just go back. When we are right here, we are working on free, so we are working with hertz or milliseconds. So the pitch has a note value. Depending on the pitch, well, it depends the speed, you know, how it's going to go. So if it's going too fast or too slow, depending on your notes, you can offset the incoming MIDI signal by an octave or 2 or 3. So now you will have a different effect, because since you're just changing the rate, it's just going to react differently. Notice that it's a little bit more noticeable, the effect right now. And even if I go by 3 octaves, it goes very slow, faster, much faster, and we keep going up. So notice that by going 3 octaves down, this just works a little bit better. We can hear the effect as we go up in pitch, or, you know, go up in octaves in this case. It's just going to be way too fast for us to really hear. It's just going to be like a, you know, just like a fast LFO. Now, this way of doing things is like the main way, but it doesn't mean that you need to use this in order to, you know, retrigger or create your envelopes, you know, restart your envelopes. So you have the MIDI, which we kind of already used it, and then we have the audio. So when we go to MIDI, we have a bunch of options, and when we go to audio, we have even the, you know, we even have the sidechain. So I'm going to be going to the audio, because maybe what we want to do, we want to re-trigger the envelope, not by 1 bar, but we want to re-trigger it by doing listening to the audio signal. I'm going to be playing this, you know, the sum hats that we have right here, and for now I'm just going to use the magnitude. This is what is going on. If I do a sidechain or do something like that, notice that it's not 1 bar. If I do 16 bars, it doesn't matter. This is still, you know, doing this sidechain, right? So let me just go maybe to 8 bars. Is it still doing it? And it's because it's re-triggering the envelope. It's starting over when we listen to the hats, when it listens to the hats. Now, looks pretty simple, but it's a little bit more complicated than that because you're working with audio, and audio might be really different if you're using a kick or you're using some hats, or maybe you're using a full mix. So you need to go to the audio config settings. Now, this is the audio settings. We are going to be talking about this in a minute because this is we need to do a little bit of talking, about this. First, I want to finish with the rest of the controls. So when you go to MIDI, you have the configuration that we already discussed when we went to the MIDI switch. And when you're standing on audio again, you get the, the global audio configuration. Now, but then you have another option that it's going to be this one, and this one is the looping on or the one shot. So let me just show you how this works. I'm using a synthesizer and I'm going to be playing some notes. Now I'm going to be kind of resetting this so we can just see it on a, just a little bit more normal. I'm going to be playing a note, it lasts 1 bar. And I'm going to be doing some side chaining. So when I play it, it's going to side chain, it's going to last 1 bar. And I'm just playing the, my MIDI keyboard. I'm just playing a chord. Now what happens if I go to MIDI? I'm going to be playing a key, and this is going to re-trigger. But notice that it's just not doing it again. So what the F is going on? I'm going to be playing the MIDI in 3, 2, 1. It's going to do the sidechain, and I'm holding the keys, but it's not going back, and it's not doing it again. And this is because the loop, it's off. So when it's on, what it means that when I play a key, it's going to trigger again, but then it's going to keep looping. Right? So it's detecting when you have an incoming MIDI note, it triggers, we get the sidechain, and then loops if we are still, holding it. As soon as I release it, it's gonna stop, but when I play it again, it's gonna restart. This is what it does by default. And right now, just playing the keys, holding it, and just playing them. But this is what it does by default. It's gonna always re-trigger on incoming MIDI notes. If I disable this one, again, the off, when this is off, is the one shot. So I'm going to be playing this, it's going to do the duck, but then it will just, will never restart. Now, if I go to audio, now instead of listening to my MIDI, it's going to listen to whatever audio I'm just sending, which is going to be the, the synth that I'm using. And this is a little bit inconsistent. I'm just pressing and holding, and sometimes it's just triggering, and sometimes it's not, which is a little bit weird. Now, if I do if I turn this on, I'm going to be playing it, and maybe it's a little bit more consistent, but still, it's just a little bit weird. And this is because the audio listens to transients to re-trigger. So we need to talk about how this works if you want to control the triggering with the audio. So first, I'm going to be showing you the sidechain. You can sidechain this to whatever it is that you want. So let me just give you an example because, it depends on your experience. It might be a little bit confusing. So I'm playing the MIDI clip with a chord that lasts 8 bars. And I want to sidechain, right? So one of the most common examples, I'm going to use the sync for now. One of the most common examples is that you just sync it and you just, sidechain with a kick. Right? Just pretty simple. But maybe I don't want to do this because sometimes the kick is going to be on different places. Sometimes the kick will just not play and you're just going to dumb sidechain. So you might want to use the audio to do this. So if you sidechain, if your DAW lets you, you're going to need to go to your sidechain options right here at the bottom. And I'm going to need to select what we want to listen to sidechain, right? To duck. So I'm going to be selecting the drums. This is where the kick lives. And notice that the response is very differently. So if I go again to the global audio, this is again something that we need to cover. It's going to show me the sidechain. So these are the, the kicks. And on each transient, which is going to be each kick, is reacting to that. So this is how you do the sidechain. You just listen to whatever other source, and it's ducking, following, and re-triggering when the kick hits. Now, the sidechaining, again, it depends on your DAW. On Bitwig, it's just very simple. On other DAWs, maybe listening to a sidechain might be a little bit more just, complicated, let's say. But right here, we're just listening to the kick, and this LFO is restarting when it picks up a transient. And we can see it right there, and we can see it right here. So when you're working with audio, sidechains, and all of this, again, remember this section is super important, so let's talk about it right now. Okay, so let's talk about the global audio trigger. So I'm going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to be playing it, and we are ducking that synthesizer with the kick by, listening to the kick. So this is very simple. Right here is going to tell you where it's picking up those transients. If you go all the way over the top, nothing's going to get triggered. Only the ones that exceed the peak. It's not detecting the transients. Sometimes it does because maybe it's a little bit too loud, but the trick is that when you go down, it's going to start picking the transients up, and every time it detects it, it's going to go and do it. Just pretty simple task. Now, since now we are using a kick, which is something very predictable, as we can see, it's going to be a piece of cake. Right? It's just a piece of cake. It's going to detect it and re-trigger the LFO. Now, if you want to listen to whatever it is that you're trying to, sidechain, you just can go right here, and it's going to play back whatever it is that you're seeing right here. And then you just can go back. Right. If you want to use this, you just can disable, and now it's just going to go solo, which is, the dumb 1-bar sidechain. Right, but we don't want to do this. We want to listen to the sidechain. Right, so right here you have the input filter. So let's say that you want to listen, or you want to sidechain to something a little bit more complicated. So let me just put a clip. So this is my sidechain. Right, for now I'm just gonna mute the synth. So this is the sound I'm trying to use to sidechain and provide an instruction, but notice it's just going crazy because we have a lot of peaks, a lot of transients. So it's always depends on what you want to use to re-trigger the LFO. If you use something complicated, something more complex, you're gonna need to do some working. So the first thing right here is that you have an input filter. So let me just turn on the synthesizer. So maybe we don't want to trigger on all the peaks, and you can just need to move the bar and decide which peak is going to re-trigger the LFO. But also the input filter is going to narrow the search, because maybe we want to trigger for the kick. So when you start filtering, notice that you get a different signal. So now maybe we can just lower this and trying to find the kick, which is on pretty much on everything. Almost there. And now we are just almost re-triggering on every single kick hit. I'm gonna expand this, there we go. So now it's, consistent to the kick. All right, now we can go the other way around. What happens if I want to do it to the other side, to the upper frequencies? So all of this depends on, what you want to sidechain. Now, what you get right here is different algorithms. Now, right now we are working on drums. So this is just going to be very reactive, or it's going to help you to kind of, find the sweet spot for drums if you're using the drums. Now, then general, it's going to be for all purpose, and then complex for more complex sounds like the one we have right now, which is kind of a full loop. Right? So all of them will just, help you to fine tune and find the right trigger. Now then you have the detail, and I'm going to be expanding the input filter for now. So as we can see, we have a lot of peaks, a lot of triggers. Now the detail, as you go up on the detail, it's going to detect more transients. It's going to be more detailed. So now you're going to be just re-triggering on every single thing. But now, let's say again, we want to trigger or be reactive to the kick. So by going down on the detail, it's gonna give you less peaks. So this again is working for us if we want to sidechain the kick, just gonna work a little bit better. Right? If you go all the way down, it's just gonna be less until you just get nothing. There we go. Alright, so let me just show you something else. Right here, when you, I'm gonna be playing back, and I'm gonna go back to the kick because it's just easier to see. A lot easier to see. Right, so every time that this is re-triggering to something, right here you can see the short version of it, which is super cool. Right here you can see in detail what the F is going on. Now sometimes, since this is reactive to audio, you might be a little bit late or a little bit behind, forward or backwards, or behind, or whatever. But you're gonna be very early or late, depends on what you want to call it. You're gonna be rushing, you're gonna be jogging. But this gives you the trigger shift. So whenever it re-triggers, usually it triggers like that. It's gonna be triggering right on point, but you can offset it. So instead of just triggering there, I just can move it and move it 4 milliseconds behind. So now it's not gonna it's gonna trigger right when the kick hits. Just gonna re-trigger the LFO a little bit after. But then you can do the other side, which is instead of being reactive like this is like a reactive side chaining. You can be pre-active, which is gonna kind of start ducking a little bit before. Still, everything that we are doing depends on the material, right? What you're trying to sidechain or what we are trying to react to. Okay, so let me show you one more thing. Right now, I'm putting this SHAPERBOX on the drum loop. So I'm going to be playing the drum loop. And we can see it right there. So we are standing on audio. We are going to the global audio trigger. And we are just picking the transients, right? So every time we see a colored one, it means that it's triggering. Now, right here it says MIDI out. What the F is this? And if you click it, you can just turn it off, or you can just choose an octave or something like that. So I'm gonna be going to, maybe C2. Wow, why not? Maybe something, a little bit higher, C3. So every time that this is detecting a transient, it's re-triggering the LFO. But when it does, it's going to output a MIDI information, a MIDI note. In this case, it's going to be C3. Now, I'm using Bitwig. Now on Bitwig, this is a cool DAW, it can detect that this plugin is outputting MIDI, and it does it on the same track. So if I show you the same track but the drums are, notice that we can see right here the MIDI trigger, right? And if I just go crazy and just, select more transients to trigger, it's going to be triggering more, right? So we can really see the trigger right here. And this is something, that you can do on Bitwig. You can just listen for audio and MIDI on the same track. Something, pretty unique to Bitwig. You can still do it on, on the other DAWs. But right here, it's just very simple. So this is super cool because now you get a trigger with a MIDI, and you can maybe externally, just output this information that when this is triggering, you can trigger other things, because this is giving a MIDI information that when this is triggering, maybe other things should be triggering. Still, it's going to be right here in the MIDI note, which is going to be C3. You can just change it to whatever else that you want. Now this drums, for now, we are just using it. But if I mute the channel, I'm just going to mute it. This is still goes in the back. So we can use the MIDI information that this is outputting to retrigger our other devices, right? So again, all of this is just gives you, this plugin gives you a lot of tools that maybe you're not going to use in your life, but you need to know that you have these tools and you can use them if you need to. All right, so let me just show you one more thing I didn't tell you when you're working with MIDI and audio. When you're working with sync, the duration of the whole thing, it's just going to be whatever it is that you're using right here. But with MIDI or audio, you can, you can just turn the loop on and it's just going to loop, right? Now, when you remove it, notice that something appears right here. So this is the end marker. So I'm going to be side chaining. And I can just end it way before. So it's not gonna be doing whatever it is that you do right here. Just gonna do this one. So you have the option to use the end marker if you wanted to and adjust the length. Now this is something that you get with MIDI and audio as well. Okay, so let's just keep moving forward. If you understood at least 80% of everything that we did right here, you're going to be able to, master this, because this is like the most complicated. I won't say complicated, but it's just, you need to kind of pay attention and understand it. If you, surpass this part, everything else is just going to be a piece of cake. So besides this part, you have the LFO control strip. So this is going to be the one. So if I just, create something, whatever, it doesn't matter. Right here, do something and then something. You can select different points. If you want to delete them, you just kaboom, delete those ones, or you can just delete everything. Pretty simple. I feel like I don't need to, I just don't need to tell you what it does. Now, right here, you have something called the randomize. This is going to give you a random, it's going to give you a random volume. Now the thing is that this depends on the modulator, and you need to have something. For example, if I do have some shape, whatever shape, this is going to randomize that shape based on the amount of points that you have right here. So it's not going to create, anything for you. Right now it's just going up and down because you have one single point, which is this one, the one you have right here. That's why, it's going up or down. It's just changing the position, but going up and down. If I, go back to sync and I go there, this is just gonna, give you interesting, different shapes. Now I'm gonna go to give you some more examples. I'm gonna be doing this. So this, what it can do, it can randomize, but only the vertical positions. If I hold Shift and click it, it's just going to randomize the vertical positions of this ones. This point, and this ones, they are not going to the left or they are not going to the right. It's just going up and down and randomizing that. If I don't shift, they change positions, right? They're going horizontally. But right now, if I lock it, notice that when I do shift, it's just going to give you an icon right there. So we are just randomizing everything, but vertically and not horizontally. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to be doing something like this. Now, or maybe something like that. So then you have the multiplier, very simple. You just click it and it's going to multiply whatever you have. And it's just going to multiply it as much as you want to, right? You can go really crazy. Now, one thing that you can do with this one that maybe you didn't know, I'm going to be doing something like that. I'm going to multiply it, but now I'm going to do shift and I'm going to multiply it again. Notice it's different. So when you do shift, instead of multiply it by 2, you're going to multiply by 3. So I'm going to be doing it again. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do just 1. I'm going to do shift. I'm going to click. And now we have 3 instead of 2. So whatever you have right here going on, if I just play the loop, whenever I move it, it's going to nudge all the positions, all the points. You can go to the left or you just can go to the right. All right? Pretty understandable, pretty easy. You have your undo. If I undo, it's just gonna take me back and I can redo to take me forward. Right, so the next thing that we need to discuss is going to be the multiband. I'm gonna be using the volume for now. So we have the drum loop, right? The good old common, drum loop that we've been using. And I'm gonna go back to magnitude. Right, so we have a lot of going on. We have the kick, the snare, the tiny little hats. So the multiband is going to give you 3 LFOs in one. So right now, when you do something, and I'm going to be doing maybe a sidechain, something like that. Maybe this one is going to, just sidechain like that. Maybe I'm going to be changing it to something like that. Maybe I'm going to do something like this. So we can sidechain, but we are sidechaining everything. So we are killing the kick. And it's because we are sidechaining the full spectrum. But maybe I just don't want to do this. Maybe I just want to sidechain the higher part of the spectrum. The snare, the hats, and everything else. So you can adjust this. So now the mid, which is this section, is just going to be sidechaining, and you can audition whatever is going on right here. So we are just sidechaining the higher frequencies and not the kick. So now we are just letting the kick pass. And all the different bands, you have independent control. So I can do a little bit of less of mix on the mid band, and when I go to the low band, it's just a completely different LFO. So in this one, maybe I just want to, I don't know, narrow a little bit of the kick. So I'm gonna be doing the opposite of a sidechain. I'm gonna flip the vertical. I'm just gonna make the kick narrow. Right? So I can do that. We are doing that on the lows. We are doing the opposite on the mids. If I go to the lows and I audition, you're just making everything super short, but maybe it's just too short, so I can just, you know, bring the mix a little bit down. But not also that, you have a high, so I could bring the high and audition that section. So maybe on this one I just want to do, I don't know, something rhythmical. So on the highs we are doing something rhythmical, on the mids we are doing the sidechain, and the other one we are doing, you know, the trim. We are trimming the kick. Notice how different it sounds. Of course, I'm just giving you an example. It just doesn't sound good because we are doing it on a, you know, full drum track. But we could use this, the multiband, for, you know, a lot of different purposes. Let's say I'm gonna go, you know, I'm gonna kill it, and I'm gonna go maybe to do it something a little bit more creative. I'm gonna go to the drive, right? Now, if I apply drive, it's gonna be doing that, so it's a little bit too much, especially, you know, with the kick. Depends on what you want to do. But maybe I just want to bypass the kick, and I don't want to drive the kick. So now it's gonna be applying saturation to the higher parts. Maybe I want to do to the higher, you know, maybe to the hats and everything that happens on the higher frequencies. So I just can target that and leave everything else alone. Right here you have the slope. My default is 12 dBs. You can do it, you know, you can do 24, and it's going to be a little bit more focused on this area. 6 is a little bit wider. And this works again like a multi-band. Right? So it's pretty simple. Let's say that I want to do maybe this on the mids. Notice how the sound changes. I'm gonna be doing something like, yeah, pretty aggressive, just on the mids. Right here. If I turn it off, super different. But now, I'm gonna go to the bit crush, and I'm gonna be bit crushing the highs. So which is gonna be this section. I'm going to be doing something, you know, maybe more rhythmical. And I'm going to go down in the mix. And we are just doing it on the, maybe to the highs. If I turn it off, completely different. Now, the multiband, along with, you know, the whole plugin, the multiband is just a fantastic thing that you should not overlook because it's super creative. Alright, so I'm gonna give you a different example with the synth, because why not? This deep dive is already too long, so making it a little bit longer, it doesn't matter. So we have that synth that it's pretty dull. I want to make it better. I'm gonna go to the lows, and maybe on the lows I'm gonna be adding a little bit of movement. I'm gonna go down in the mix right here. And it's just gonna move a little bit. It's just the lows. I'm gonna go to the mids, and I want something more crazy. So I'm gonna stand in the mids. I'm gonna go to, I don't know, creative. I'm just gonna do something like that. Maybe add resonance. Why not? It's gonna be maybe a little bit too aggressive, so I'm gonna tone it down. But we have movement now. I'm gonna go to the upper frequencies. And now, what can we do right here? Well, we can do whatever we want. I'm gonna maybe go to basic, and I'm just gonna be doing something more, you know, more just a little bit more constant. We have the resonance. Maybe we can tone down the cutoff. And I'm gonna be maybe expanding this and just go down in the mix. And if I remove this section and we hear it as a whole, we just turn something very dull into something more creative. And I'd say that we want to maybe do a little bit of panning. We just can. If I remove this, this was the original sound. And this is the process. Completely different. Now that you know all the tools and how to use them, you just need to use them. This is a plugin where you need to go and explore. You need to go out, try different patterns, create your own shapes, and you need to do some exploration. Sometimes whatever you do right here, it's not going to work. Maybe it's just not what you wanted, and then you just keep moving forward to a different thing. But sometimes you just gonna do something creative, just like we just did with the with the filter and the panning, and it's just gonna be the final sound for that that sound. Still, if you want to be creative, I'm gonna be standing on that synth. You have a million patches and presets, right? So you can go to all, and you have a million. So what is important right here is that it's separated by different categories. It's color, pitch, rhythmical, and maybe I'm gonna be going to chop and gate. And when you go to chop and gate, all the colors will tell you which shaper it's using. I'm gonna maybe go to this one because I don't know. See? Grab the sound and just change it completely. From a synth. Original sound. And what we get after. So again, you need to go and explore all of this. And now that you know all the controls and what is going on, you know what you can do. Now, still, I'm going to be covering each SHAPERBOX one by one, just talking about the different options that you get right here, because all of them are just a little bit different when you need to use them. Okay, so that's it. So hopefully you learned something on this one, and this was useful, and now you know how to control your SHAPERBOX a little bit better. So still remember that I'm going to be uploading videos covering all the different shapers and giving you different examples with each shaper. Right, so if you like this, remember to like and subscribe. And if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee, you can go to the links in the description. You have links for Google Thanks, or YouTube Thanks, and you have Patreon and you have PayPal. Right, so see you on the next one.